You look awfully devilish today, by the way, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you. Brad, welcome to Investor Hell.
I love it. I'm excited about this. This is going to be
All right.
fun.
All right. Well, here we go. Hi, my name is Mark M. Smeltzer, and welcome to Investor Hell. Today, I've got Brad Blazar. Blad. Welcome, Blad. Brad has raised billions of dollars. He is a speaker. He is the author of several books. He's the founder of Capital School and the founder of The Art of Beliefology. Brad, one of the main things that you focus on is limiting beliefs. Now, before we get started into Investor Hell, I am curious. Are you religious?
Not overly religious, a little bit, but not really. I don't go to church on a regular basis, and not a Bible belting Baptist like we have here in Texas.
Fair enough. I am curious what some of the limiting beliefs that you have and that you struggle with sometimes that you've dealt with on a regular basis that you're either currently trying to overcome or ones that you've recently overcome.
Fear and limiting beliefs are what hold most people back in life. And as I tell people, as kind of an expert in this area and having written a book about it, I don't think it's necessarily the fear of doing something. I think the biggest fear most people have is the judgment of other people. I think that's what holds most people back from true success in life. It's, the thought of, if I try this and it doesn't work, what will my siblings say, or what will my parents think, or what will my best friend say about it? And we live in such a, quote, criticized society today, where what I have found just talking to and studying some of the more successful people is that they have the innate ability to block out what I call that white noise. They just don't listen to their feelings. And it's a hard thing to do. I mean, we all obviously are introspective. We all look introvertly at ourselves. And if you really want to exceed in life, I think the one thing that you have to understand is it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. That's the one thing that's holding you back more than anything else. And so once you commit to something, it's just a matter of taking daily action, showing up, moving forward, getting back up when you get kicked down, and basically just turning your back to all the haters and the naysayers. I mean, on this journey that I've taken, certainly to get to where I am, I can't tell you how many times people in Facebook would say negative things or, belittle my post or whatever you want to call it. A person that I really look up to and respect that's been hugely successful, Ed Mylett, one of the top keynotes and one of the top speakers, he said something that really resonated with me a couple of weeks ago. He said, hurt people hurt people. And if you stop with that and reflect, it's like if you have to take 30 seconds out of your day to post something like that negatively about me, I empathize and I sympathize with you, because you must be in a really low place to have to project your negative thoughts upon somebody else.
Yeah, what's going
And,
on with that?
it's really very dynamic. But once you understand that, it's like that shit don't bother me no more. It's like, why even spend time to respond to you and even acknowledge you, right? But it's a really, really tough thing to do, certainly on that journey to success. But I think that, learning to basically just commit to something and then move forward, irregardless of the opinions and the thoughts of others, is something that you just have to do. And I've certainly overcome a lot of scary things in life as an entrepreneur. I've done a lot of things where I've committed to do something and had no idea how it would work out. But I did. And the funny thing is, I tell people this: as an entrepreneur, if you'll commit to something and then publicly state that you've committed, it's almost like now you got to do it, because it's like, holy crap, I told the
Well,
world.
I've committed to Investor Hell.
But the solution will always present itself. And that's the interesting thing. For example, earlier this year, I was invited to speak down in Florida, and it was on a pretty big stage. It was alongside people like Floyd Mayweather and Grant Cardone's partner, Brandon Dawson, and Bobby Castro, a hip hop recording artist, Rich the Kid. And so I came in and I told my wife, man, I'm going to fly down to this event on a private jet. She's like, what? I'm like, yeah, man, I'm going to fly down there on a private jet, just like Grant Cardone flies, big old
Mm.
G Citation. She's like, you have any idea how much that's going to cost you? I had no idea. Yeah. I mean, I knew it was going to be more than a United Airlines ticket.
Sure.
So I started calling around to charter companies and found out that it was going to be about a $30,000 trip.
Sure.
Round trip. And so when I told her that, it's amazing that we're still married. She's like, who in the hell are you trying to impress? Like, why don't you just fly United and go first class? That's 1,800 versus $30,000.
Yeah.
I said, no, I'm flying on a private plane. And so I publicly went out on Facebook and Instagram, said, hey man, I'm going to this big ass event, going to be meeting Floyd Mayweather and hip hop recording artist Rich the Kid. Anybody want to join me on the plane?
Yeah.
What I found is people were willing to pay $5,000 per seat to hop on that jet with me and go to this badass event and be guaranteed to be in one of the first two rows with the VIP ticket, which was all inclusive. And in about 3 days, I sold out the rest of the seats on that plane and I ended up flying for free. So what came out of that is the learning experience of committing to something, and then the solution presents itself. And since that time, I've done it on multiple occasions. And I'll tell you, it's the only way to fly.
So yeah, once you
fly
fly
for free and also fly in your own private jet.
So I've heard. And that's actually one of the goals for Investor Hell was to instead record from the skies. So do it on private jets, do it on the private planes of people, and actually, recording from the heavens, Investor Hell. So
I love it.
Yeah. So anyway, well, I'm grateful. So you say judgment from other people. That's what most people are afraid of.
I think so. I really do. Having studied a lot of very successful entrepreneurs, having talked, to a lot of very successful entrepreneurs, I think that's the big thing. It's the fear of what other people will think if you are unsuccessful in whatever endeavor it is you're undertaking in life. And it's just really blocking out that noise and realizing it don't matter what other people think. Screw them. If you're not going to be supportive of my dreams, goals, and desires, then
get out of my face.
I don't want you in my circle.
Yeah, that's right. It's funny. I tell people that myself, and they're like, well, that's me. And I'm like, no,
it's not.
No, it's not.
And people have to understand, and this is a word that you use loosely out there, but it's you got to love yourself. It's self-love. You got to look at yourself and realize, man, if I don't love myself and I don't have dreams and goals and aspirations, and really know where I'm heading and know why I'm waking up and doing what I do every day, life becomes really unpleasurable to live. I tell people, look, whether you have a job working for somebody else, whether you're an entrepreneur and you're in business for yourself, if you don't understand what gets you up in the morning and why you go and you do what you do, it's going to be a real displeasure to go to work every day. Because, if you look at the statistics in our country, 67% of the workforce already have one foot out the door. That's 2/3 of the people employed in the United States are already out looking for another job. So that tells you that a lot of people show up with discontent, unhappiness, counterproductive, to quote the work that they're actually doing, because they don't enjoy it. But I tell people, why do you get up and go to work every day? And they're like, because I have to. I got a job. My employer expects me to be there. That's not enough.
Yeah.
Because, you'll get kicked in the knees, you'll get punched in the gut, and you have to have that inner drive, that grit to get back up and keep going. And so I'm real clear in what our purpose is and why we do what we do here. But people need to really do a lot of soul searching and understand what it is about them that creates that desire to, as I say, do something bigger in life.
Well, speaking of soul searching, I'm about to get into the real meat and potatoes of Investor Hell. Thank you, by the way, for being so transparent and so genuine with your answer. You're not overly religious. Sometimes you struggle with the fear and judgment of other people.
I'm on a show called Investor Hell of all places. You want me to tell you that I'm a Bible Belt Baptist and Investor Hell? Get out the cross.
Yeah.
Get out the silver bullet.
Anyway, I just wanted to say thanks for being so genuine with your answer. Sure. There. So I can already tell that this is going to be a good show just based off of the only 2 or 3 questions that I've asked. Let's get into it. Investor hell. So on this show, you're going to be picking one of the 7 deadly investment sins. That's going to be pride, greed, lust, envy, gluttony, wrath, or sloth. And then what we would do is we would talk about the virtue that goes along with that investment sin after, setting the stage, telling us the story, and getting up to all the way to the point where you're about to fight this dragon, and then how you are going to lead us and other people who are listening to salvation.
I love it.
So what do you think, Brad, of the 7 deadly investment sins? Which one do you feel is you got a story that you haven't really talked about that you feel is worth discussing?
The one that I would like to talk about, and the one I think that a lot of people are guilty of, is greed.
Cool. Okay, so in that case,
and the wheel, man.
The wheel. Let's spin it. Today we've got Brad Blazar talking about greed. Set the stage, Brad. Give us that ordinary world that you were living in and the new world that you had to experience.
Well, many years ago when I was in the oil business, I was a CEO of my own business and doing quite well. And just sitting down talking to my accountant, realized we got a major tax problem here. I was a very successful entrepreneur, and looking at the amount of money that I was paying out to Uncle Sam every year, I said, man, there's got to be a better way to do this. And so I started looking around, and back in the mid to late 1980s, the way the tax and the way the investment system was structured is they used to allow people to invest in real estate programs and other types of investments that were highly leveraged. And so you could take advantage basically of something that was called a 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 write-off, which means if you invested $50,000, you get the ability to write off $150,000 in taxes. Or, if you invested $100,000, you'd be able to write off $200,000 or $300,000 in taxes. And I said, man, that sounds great. So anyway, we started looking around, and back in the late 80s, there was a gentleman by the name of Craig Hall. Some of the people that are a little older on the show might actually recognize the fact that he was actually an owner at one time of the Dallas Cowboys and owned a minority interest, but also was one of the largest syndicators of multifamily real estate in the United States. And so we looked at investing in one of his deals. It was a beautiful, real nice, Class A multifamily property here in Houston, Texas. A couple hundred units, pools, clubhouse, fitness centers, all the nice stuff.
Yeah.
And so I ended up investing. And, it was one of those investments where they said, look, if you make a commitment, rather than putting all the money in up front, you're going to pay in over a number of years, as the funds are called by the lenders and the banks. So basically what they do is they have you sign a promissory note. And I said, okay, great. So I signed this promissory note to basically over a couple of years invest $110,000. And for the first couple of years, it went great, man. Got the information at the end of the year. Here's your pro rata share of profits and losses. But this was at a time in the late 1980s, early 90s, where all of a sudden kind of the real estate industry went belly up. And the occupancy on this particular property, and I guess, across the country for many people in real estate, went down. And so it became really difficult for them to pay back the interest in the loans to the bank.
Okay.
And to make a long story short, this and many of the other deals that Craig Hall and many of the other big syndicators were doing back then went into receivership and ultimately into bankruptcy. So ultimately, I ended up losing the money that I had invested in that property. But it gets even worse. So not only did I lose the money that I invested in the property, back then they had something called phantom income. And what phantom income basically is, it's paying taxes on money that you never earned. So all of the tax benefits and all of the deductions that I was able to derive came back to me as income. And I'm sitting here going, how am I going to pay taxes on this when I didn't earn it? Yeah, my CPA said, well, that's just the way the tax structure works, young man. You got to play with the house of cards that you're dealt.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like, well, that I guess is what comes out of being a little too greedy is, you got to realize that, you know, if an investment sounds too good to be true, more than likely it is. I learned a big lesson back in those days, and that is that when you look at any investment, the investment has to make sense and be sound based on the economics. Don't invest in something just for the tax benefits or for the sake of saving taxes, which is, ultimately what I did back then. So being a little over greedy, maybe a little zealous, that came back to bite me. And of course, over a couple of years, we had to pay the taxes on that. I've obviously fully recovered, but I'd say that was a big lesson as an investor to quote be an investor hell, because for a couple of years I certainly felt like I was actually there.
I'm curious because obviously, you being the hero of this story, eventually, you will talk about you recovering and the charity behind it in some way, opposition of greed, the virtue being charity. I want to understand the feeling of it. Help us understand what it felt like to receive that deal and what it felt like to go through the motions of that, the feeling of, I'm not going to say getting screwed, but in a way, getting screwed.
Yeah.
What did that feel like?
It felt pretty bad. If you can imagine going down a slide, and a slide ain't a slide, it's a cheese grater. It felt like that. I mean, let's face it, it was one thing to lose all of the money that you put into the deal because it was a sizable amount of money over a couple of years. But it was one thing to realize, holy crap, now I got to pay back all of the tax benefits that I derived, which was essentially twice the amount that I had invested. That's a pretty big tax bill, six figures, writing checks to Uncle Sam, figuring out how you're going to do that. But it's one of those things where I tell people now, kind of as a mentor, if you're going to invest in anything, base the decision to invest on the economics. Make sure you understand what it is you're investing in. Make sure what it is you're putting your money into makes sense, so that you're not quote just getting into it for quote the wrong reasons. But
so you felt like it was actually you were getting into it for the wrong reasons, for sure.
Well, I mean, at the time, no. At the time, I thought it was great. I was making a wise decision. I was saving money in taxes. I was investing in real estate. I was hoping the real estate would go up and appreciate in value, which historically it usually does. But, we have to realize that most industries, including real estate, are cyclical. Right? We're seeing that now. We're going into recession, maybe a depression. Interest rates are up, right? And so when you look at occupancy and you look at what people are currently paying in rent, prices are starting to basically adjust downwards. And so for people maybe that invested in certain sectors of real estate a year and a half ago, they're going, man, this is going to be tough, man. I don't know how we're going to get through this. But, at the end, if you have a long-term perspective, things tend to usually work out for the best, which it did. But again, it was a tough lesson.
Well, that sucks.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Like I said, man, it's like going down a slide that really ain't a slide. It's more of a grater.
Yeah.
I don't feel too good.
Yeah. I am curious of what you feel the dragon was that you had to fight in that regard, like specifically that deal. Because leaving this new world that you had to learn these lessons and coming out and what fight you had to go through, you said that eventually you did recover, but the dragon was, it took a couple of years in order to recover. So how did you save yourself? What was the in a way charity toward yourself or charity toward others that helped you along your journey of coming out of that greed rut that you were in?
Well, I mean, it's the way that I look at stuff now. And I realize, bad things happen to good people. I say that in my coaching and training that, if you're raising money from investors, you got to protect yourself because you get into things with great good intentions. And sometimes things work out, sometimes they don't. But the other thing is really just understanding that everything in life is temporary. It's a temporary moment. And with time, it will pass. It might be tough in the moment, but it ain't going to be tough forever. And I think that's really the best lesson is, you'll get through it. And it's the same thing with health. If you have a disease or an illness, hopefully it's temporary. It's not obviously, progressive where it's a death sentence, but everything in life for the most part is just a temporary moment.
Yeah.
This was a temporary moment. When you're an entrepreneur, you're a business owner, there are going to be things that might happen to you. Somebody might steal from you, right? Somebody might not be a good employee, and so you let them go and you eventually recover. You look at, relationships, right? You get into the wrong relationship. Maybe you end up separated, or worse yet, you end up divorced. It is a temporary moment. We heal and we move on. And so I think in this particular incident, Mark, what I learned on, and what more importantly, it reinforced for me, is that it was terrible. It sucked. I hated it,
Yeah.
but it was a temporary moment. And, now that we're well beyond that, doing well, we've learned from that mistake and, of course, avoided making that mistake again. But it also, I think, shed light on the other 6 sins that you talk about in Investor Hell, to be more prudent, make wiser investment decisions, and really do a much better job in the way we look at investments today, and the way I deploy capital, and the way that I do due diligence. But it's really just having that mindset that, hey, while it sucks, it's just temporary. It ain't going to be like this forever. And I tell my daughter the same thing, because she goes through periods as an 11-year-old where she gets upset, and I just have to reassure, honey, it ain't going to be like this forever. Suck it up, Buttercup. It's just temporary. And that's my expression to her. Suck it up, Buttercup.
There's my niece always says, you get what you get and you don't throw a fit.
There you go. Yeah.
Suck it up, Buttercup.
Life ain't easy. Let's face it. If it was all beds and roses, but it ain't.
But that's why I'm curious, though, bringing back to, I still want to talk about the charity aspect of the greed. But when you say that, do you really believe that life ain't easy? I mean, would you rather have it be easy?
I would rather have it be easy. I think that you go through life and you hopefully learn lessons from everything, good, bad, indifferent. As they say, if you make the mistake and get over it, it's your fault for making it again. Hopefully you learn from mistakes you make, and you look back and you realize, hey, this didn't work, or I did this. And so I look at some of the things that I've stumbled on, and I just learn from them. I look at it as, any entrepreneur, has to look at failure the right way. And I think that one of the big problems is people are afraid to fail.
Yeah.
Failure's great. I mean, hell, it just puts you one step closer to finding the solution.
Yep.
To doing something right. And certainly all of us have heard the story about, Thomas Edison, or about, Colonel Sanders, right? Kentucky Fried Chicken. So you have to understand all those different things that are just moving you one step closer to finding the solution, or getting the answer to doing the right thing.
Sounds like the dogs of hell are barking.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's the dog. Somebody must be coming up the driveway.
Well, I know that we're running low on time here, so I do want to hear your redemption story of either being charitable, or seeking out your fair share and then giving away the rest, or discuss some of the charitable actions that you've done over the years, and teach people how to give back to the world.
Yeah. I'm a pretty philanthropic guy. People say that, I'm probably too overgiving, but it's really just kind of this desire to help other people. And so I lost my dad, over 20 some odd years ago. He was 67, diagnosed with cancer, and unfortunately, we lost him. And so I'm really, really very proactive in my fight for cancer, realizing that, our society here, Western traditional medicine, more than likely probably doesn't want to find a cure. I've got a whole conversation that we could have about that, and just the fact that most physicians and our medical system in general wants to keep you sick, because that's the pharmaceutical industry. Doctors make a living performing surgery. And I'm much more on the other side. Preventive medicine is really what we should be practicing and preaching. But it started, when I was, I guess you'd call a runner. I started doing half marathons, and then started doing triathlons. And, that certainly takes a fair amount of training. But more importantly, it's really mind over body. You're 10, 20 miles into a run, and people ask, well, Jesus, what the hell keeps you going? It's the desire to do more. And so I used to get people to pledge a mile. Give me $5 a mile. And if I do the marathon, but if I get, 20 people or 50 people that are pledging this race, every mile becomes more money for what? For cancer research, for MD Anderson. And so that's largely when I was doing a lot of triathlons and running, how I kept motivated and gave back that charity aspect that you're speaking about, Mark. Today, it's in my books. If you read any of my books, it says right on the inside cover that a portion of the author and the coach's revenue goes to fight cancer. And so, every time I get on stage, or every time somebody enrolls in Capital School, or anytime anybody buys one of our books, we basically, believe in being philanthropic, and that's kind of the legacy that I'm attempting to create just by being here and basically doing what it is we do every day.
I love that. That is a way to give back. That is a way to be charitable. I want to end the show with some advice from you on how to pitch you, because that is the main issue that I'm trying to solve. A lot of investors are met with people who waste their frickin' time.
Yeah.
And I don't want your time wasted. So, Brad, teach us how to not waste your time. How do you like being pitched new projects, and what are you currently looking for?
Well, I think that,
we're always looking for.
Yeah. And I think if you're going to capture somebody's attention, and, you're going to pitch them an idea, or you're going to pitch them an opportunity, you've got to get their attention fairly quickly. You got to know, number one, who you are, what you're doing, why you're doing it. And then more importantly, be able to articulate and communicate to that potential investment partner how they're going to see a return on their investment. And there was a gentleman that was in real estate, and I just loved the way that he approached people. He would go out and network, or he'd be at a party or whatever. And in just natural conversation, people would ask him what he did for a living. And he said, basically, I'm a freedom consultant. Mm-hmm. And they kind of looked at him like real odd, like, what? You heard me, I'm a freedom consultant. You're probably wondering what the heck that means. And people are like, well, yeah. He said, I'm a real estate entrepreneur. And what I do is I teach people how to become financially free by investing passively in real estate and having mailbox money. Might that be something you have an interest in? And, invariably,
right in there, man.
Absolutely. I'm looking for financial freedom. I want more time. I want more abundance. I want to be able to do things when I choose to do them with the people in my life that I want to do them with. And that was kind of, I guess, what you would call his little elevator pitch. Is rather than saying, hey, I'm a real estate entrepreneur, or, I invest in single family rentals, he just coined the word, hey, I'm a freedom consultant. I sell financial freedom. And it worked for him. And I think that's how you capture somebody's interest. Good friend of mine, that's one of the top business coaches probably in the world today, Coach Micheal Burt. If you don't follow him, look him up. But he's great.
I've interviewed Micheal. Micheal, hello, Coach Burt. Yeah, we got to have him on Investor Hell.
But Micheal talks about something that you may or may not have heard him speak about, called your explanation of service.
Yes.
And he said that your explanation of service is kind of like your hook. It's leading with your beliefs, then backing up your beliefs with why you believe those things, then a testimonial or story, and then basically asking that other person whether they want to go deeper with you. And it works like magic. If you understand that concept, that people are naturally attracted to people that share similar beliefs, so that if you and I believe similar things, you're going to want to move in my direction. Yeah. Now, if you don't have similar beliefs, that's fine too. You don't have to agree with all my beliefs and the things that I believe in. But if you do, you're going to move and gravitate in my direction. So as an example, when people ask Coach Burton, largely now when people ask me what I do, is I just kind of hold up my hand and I say, Mark, before I tell you what I do, let me share a couple of things I believe. I believe everybody has a desire to have more abundance in life. I also believe that everybody has the desire to work with a coach. People that are coached will typically out-earn, outperform, and actually excel.
Everybody
I believe
needs a
for a business owner, it's sometimes better to have somebody on the outside of the business looking in than being the person on the inside of the business trying to look out. Now, let me explain to you why I believe those things. And so then you share a story, and that story will resonate with that listener. And it basically is a testimonial to what you do. And then you follow up and say, if I could do for you what I did for that other person, would it be something that you'd want to go deeper with me on? Yeah. And so you invite them to an event, you invite them to meet with you one-on-one or Zoom. Right. And it works in any industry, and this concept of explanation of service, believe it or not, was actually developed by a gentleman that was an insurance salesman. And as he got started in insurance sales, he realized that on the totem pole, he's right above used car salesperson. It's like, imagine going to an event. Hey, what do you do for a living, Mark? I'm an insurance salesman. Great, nice to meet you. It's like, nobody wants to talk to the insurance salesman, but he figured out a way to lead with his beliefs. And by leading with his beliefs and then backing it up, naturally, he was able to do quite well. And ultimately, he ended up buying the insurance company that he worked with. So, out of that came a tremendous success story. And he shared that with Coach Burt. And Coach Burt said, man, that's brilliant. I love that.
I didn't hear that story. I love that. Well, okay, good. That's what you're looking for. That's how to pitch you. That's just get there, share some stories, see how you can help each other. I love that. Brad, thank you for your time. Thanks for coming on to Investor Hell. I'm looking forward to hearing some of the people that you think would be smart to have on Investor Hell.
Absolutely.
And when you're ready to share another story and think that you could help some people, maybe in 6 months or a year and a half or so, let me know and we'll have you back on.
Sounds great. I would love to. And I'll pick another one of the 7 sins.
That does sound wonderful. I'm looking forward to that.
Gluttony or sloth, or I'll pick something else next time. This is a lot of fun. Thank you so much for being a great host, Mark.
Thank you. And thank you for listening to Investor Hell.